My name is Sara. I'm a product manager with HawkEye 360. We are operators of a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites where we basically process and provide geospatial analytics on the spectrum of radio frequency here on Earth. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is somewhat related, but in a rather odd way. I'm talking about digital transformation, what it means, and the 5 elements of digital transformation. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, how many of you here, by a show of hands, have heard of the phrase digital transformation? Whoa, almost everybody, right? It's a pretty popular buzzword. Let me get another show of hands on what that phrase actually means. And feel free to keep your hand raised or raise it up again. How many of you think that digital transformation means artificial intelligence, AI? How about, does it mean machine learning? Does it mean the Internet of Things? How about big data? All right, great. Well, you are very much closely there, almost. These are actually byproducts of digital transformation. And what we are actually touching on is just the tip of the iceberg for digital transformation. So before I get into the 5 elements of what digital transformation is comprised of, I want to talk a little bit about my own transformation, my own career transition journey. And to do that, I want to go back to the summer of 2016. So prior to the summer of 2016, I was a researcher and evaluator in the international development sector. 7 of those 8 years, I lived and worked in local communities in India, Pakistan, and northern Nigeria, studying a variety of human development phenomena, which ranged from how do we get child immunizations delivered more effectively to how do we provide better economic opportunities for rural women. In this career, though, however, I consistently saw political processes hinder progressive change rather than facilitate the progressive change for those who are most in need of it. So I took the summer of 2016 to really deeply reflect on what is compelling change in the world. Where is change coming from? And for me, my mind kept hearkening to the ongoing civil war in Syria at that point in time. This was 2016. By this point in time, the civil war in Syria had raged on for 5 years. And 13 million people had fled their homes to find other areas of safety. 6 million of those people had crossed the borders. Now let's put that into context. 13 million people is roughly the population of the entire state of Virginia and the District of Columbia. Okay? What enabled 13 million people, this mass exodus of people, to flee their homes and find safety elsewhere? And what enabled them to cross these borders, these perilous borders? Was it the United Nations? No, was not. Was it any government, for that matter? Was it European Union? No. Was it the U.S. government? No, we weren't airlifting people out of Syria like we did in Vietnam. What was it? Can I get any volunteers to answer this question? What was the one thing that enabled people and empowered them to find safety and basically shelter and basically save their own lives? What was that? Exactly. It was the smartphone. So, not necessarily social media, but it was the smartphone. What did they have on the smartphone? They had apps like WhatsApp to stay in touch with friends and family. They had apps created by other aid agencies that provided them information on where to get water distribution points. refugees were actually building apps for each other in terms of providing them maps with safe crossing points, letting them know about border checkposts, letting them know about, again, as I said, water distribution points. They were able to learn languages of other countries, whether it was Turkey or even in Nigeria, I encountered refugees there. And cities like the city of Dresden in Germany had developed apps where refugees could basically apply and get their residency permits as well as information on health and other much needed resources directly all through apps. When it came to social media, Facebook was found not to be safe to utilize to connect with friends and family back home because it was heavily monitored and still is to this day monitored by the Syrian government. So those who were in touch with friends and family on Facebook could have been targeted for attack and disappearances. So they created their own social media called Refunite, where friends and family could say, I disappeared a month ago, but I'm here in Greece, and I'm alive. So how does this relate to digital transformation? Well, all of these apps takes me into my first point. Data is the new goal. This is the first element of digital transformation, data. So data is basically by itself just characters, numbers, and letters, right? But it's how you mine that data that will determine the value of those insights, right? So this is what data is. And that mining of data enables banks to determine whether that transaction is fraudulent or not. It enables personalization of your email messages from that e-commerce store that keeps trying to coax me to come back and buy what I put in my shopping cart but abandoned. So data is the new gold, and this is the first element of digital transformation. So how do we mine those insights, right? Christina is coming from a restaurant background, but, data companies and technology is no longer just that of engineers. The model on the right side, or the left side over here, is showing where, the traditional model of, our departments being in silos. Marketing is one silo, engineering is another silo. But here on the other side is Spotify. And Spotify, like Amazon, linguists had to work next to engineers side by side to develop Alexa, right? So with Spotify, you have in a squad, they've got squads, tribes, alliances. Each of these squads and tribes and alliances, they're comprised of small enterprises. So within a squad, you're going to have a marketer sitting next to an engineer, a DevOps engineer sitting next to a product manager, sitting next to a subject matter expert. These are all many enterprises within the same company. But this helps facilitate the development of your applications much faster because you're getting that all-around expertise. And when a project becomes bigger than itself, they grow to become a tribe and then an alliance and so forth. The other fascinating thing about their operating model is that these alliances also include guilds, just like, back in the Renaissance days, where you had craft and trade guilds. But beyond just having a craft and trade guild, open to only marketers, it's open to data scientists, anybody who's interested in learning about marketing, and vice versa. Marketers can go and attend data scientist trade guilds. So they meet up on a monthly basis, and they, kind of provide information about the new learnings between them. So this cross-collaborative teams is the second part of digital transformation. So with that comes open source learning and sharing. What you see here are billion-dollar companies, and all of these companies and dozens more are actually built on open source learning and sharing. So what they have smartly done is they've shared their code through APIs. And other companies and other entities and organizations have developed further on top of their code base, which then added further value to theirs. So it's not a game of I'm going to keep all the information and everything that I know to myself. It's let's share and let's grow, and this is part of digital transformation. The fourth point of digital transformation is freedom to experiment and fail. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Google. Google allows that every employee has 20% of their time dedicated to individual products, individual projects, or individual ideas. So 20% of your time as an employee at Google, you can work on anything. And many times, those projects that started out as an individual thing, such as Google Maps, grew to become an actual full-fledged product because it took just one person dedicating their time and their energy and their mind space to hammer away and tinker at that. Companies, if they want to stay alive in this era of digital transformation, have to allow their employees this creative freedom. And this means testing and learning, right? Whether it's through experimentation, through A/B testing, or whether it's building a prototype and testing it out on users and getting feedback to determine whether this is something that is, this flow is viable and they can understand it, or whether we need to change things. So the final element of digital transformation is work anywhere. We are now connected through devices, and internet is everywhere, every building, our cars, every outlet. We are able to connect and transfer data. There's many ways to communicate, whether it's via Slack or Zoom or whatever, but that specialized talent that many companies are looking for are demanding to have this freedom and this capability to work anywhere and on their own time and on their own demands. So one way of ensuring that you have a candidate or who is going to be a proper fit for remote work is the test of 3 C's. Are those candidates who are very interested in working remotely, are they, number one, are they passionate about their craft? Number 2, are they passionate about the company that they're planning to join? Have they done the research? Do they know what the company is all about, what its values are, what it plans to go for, and how they plan to contribute to the growth of that company? And then finally, are they passionate about the customers that they are helping to contribute and build products for? So it does take a little bit more work on the part of executives who are and team leaders who are employing remote workers, because we have to end up planning our meetings in advance and practicing them like presentations in advance, so that when we do have time to communicate with our remote workforce, that we're on point with what we're talking about, and we can facilitate faster workflows. So there you have it, you guys, the 5 elements of digital transformation. And this is my contact information. I will start off the 30-second, what do you call that? The 30
lightning round?
I'll be the first to start off the lightning round. As you know, I'm with HawkEye 360. We are experiencing growth, and we are hiring for a senior DevOps engineer, a product designer, and a specialized FP&G electrical engineer. And we also have a lot of sales positions as well as a financial analyst position. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you have an interest in the spectrum of radio frequency, which carries all of our data, please either see me or contact us here at HawkEye. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sarah. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Sara on the digital transformation? All right. Got a couple hands in the air.
Hi. Yes. So my name is Marlon, and I work for. Oh, okay. So I work for a PEO, which basically is human resources. Our niche is government contractors, right? So we are going through the digital transformation within our company. My question to you is, how do you engage the people of it? How do you help them understand the transition and the transformation?
So let me get this right. You are providing staffing to government contractors? Or?
No, we are HR for government contractors. We are. Do you know what PO
Okay,
is?
so you manage the HR processes and support for government contractors who are experiencing digital transformation or who need to. Oh, you're in the process.
So they themselves are going through the process of digital
you
transformation.
are going through the process of digital transformation. Okay, so it takes a lot of patience, right? So that's number one, is to recognize that it takes a lot of patience. It's good to acknowledge what we don't know, right? And it's good to seek out the expertise of those who know more than us. I would just go back to the patience, and then start with something that you learn, follow that trail when it comes to the digital transformation. I really appreciate Christina's bravery this earlier this evening, talking about her own transition from the restaurant industry into tech and DevOps and so forth, and acknowledging what she knows and what she doesn't know, but also being willing to pursue what she's learned. And I think that's the push. That's what digital transformation does. We didn't have access to all of these applications 20, 30 years ago, right? But we learned them, right? And we learned them because we naturally want to learn, and we naturally have that curiosity to help ourselves and to empower ourselves through them. So that's the way I would pursue it.
Excellent. A couple questions back here. Mike from Modus.
Hi, thanks, Sarah. Thanks for the presentation. So you talked about remote workforce at the end, or working remotely at the end. Can you share a story either where you've worked remotely and where the fact of remote working has made a difference to you, a positive difference, or where you didn't have that opportunity and it might have made a difference? I'd like to have your personal connection to that.
On working remotely, I think so. I have worked remotely, and I think first and foremost, it's about establishing a relationship and finding a mutual connection. And that's something that companies have to do and maintain and work diligently to maintain with their remote workforce. Get to know your colleagues, what their likes and dislikes are, what are their motivations, what are their demotivations, right? And get them involved in the cultural shaping of the organization and of the company. So for me, I've worked remotely with as a consultant for other companies, and basically how I structured that relationship was to really get to know everything, their pain points, their likes, their dislikes, and get to know people on a personal level, on a personal basis. On my own experience, I've worked with developers in India and Pakistan, and to this day, I still maintain connections with many of them because I got to know them on a personal level. I got to know that they had kids. I got to learn when I was in communication with them that, hey, today's my kid's birthday, and I would have a conversation with them. Well, what are you doing for their birthday? I mean, we're all humans. Don't take, just because there's a screen between you and I, doesn't mean that I shouldn't have those personal connections and have those discussions. And so when you have this remote workforce, it's not all about work. We're specifically just going to task on the agenda of work. No, let's create a culture where we get to know each other. And in fact, in companies where there is not a remote workforce, where people are working in their desks side by side in that structured silo organization, what I explained is that burnout and lack of a sense of community is one of the number one reasons why people leave those companies. Whereas remote companies, they're making those efforts, whether they're setting up specific Slack channels for your pets and your pets' names, or dedicating certain tea time and scripts between you and your colleagues to learn about each other's personal lives and how that might play into your workday. That's very important. So yeah, this is my experience, and these are my suggestions that I've heard work for others, and I think that we should carry on.
So your first point was that data is the new gold. Now, working in this age of digital transformation where you have cross-collaboration, you're working remotely, and all these other challenges, how does security come into play to ensure that the informational assets of the organizations are properly protected?
Well, I am not a cybersecurity expert, so I will just answer that to the best of my ability, but I will give that disclaimer that I'm not a cybersecurity expert. So one of the things that I have heard or learned about is that we've had, there was a financial institution that had a very major breach of data a couple months ago. And one of the things that are coming out from that was the fact that 1/3 of that team left within the 1 year prior to that breach. So team continuity, I think, and to ensure team continuity, you would want to ensure cross-collaboration, and you want to ensure that you're not managing from a top-down perspective, but more so that you're valuing the voices of all those who are on your team. Because in terms of data, we know it's important. We know in terms of it can either make you or break you, right? So, listening and having employees having an open door policy where anything, a concern about anything can be heard, I think is important. Yeah.